everybody. Welcome to the County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. Today we're going to have a lengthy discussion for the entire half hour on a single topic, and it is the opioid problem in Utah. Now, it's been in the headlines a lot, but it seems like on a daily basis that you start to see opioids connected to just about every problem that we are having. It is definitely part of the Rio Grande issue. It's definitely part of rising crime rates. It's definitely part of continued mental illness. It is programming in jails across the county, and it's all around a source that is now being attributed in large part to prescription pain medications as to why it's exploded. Joining us for our conversation today is, of course, the Speaker of the Utah State Legislature, Greg Hughes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for joining us. Brian Besser, who is the district agent in charge for the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency here in Utah. Thank you for taking time to join us. And Commissioner Bill Lee from Utah County. Agent Besser, I'm going to start with you and just try to get a scope of how pervasive opioids are. Obviously, they sent in the big guns. They sent you to Utah. You've been here for, what, a year?
About a year and a half or so now.
Year and a half.
Yes, sir.
Tell me what the story is and how woven into the fabric of our society this has become.
Well, it's a great question, and it's a question that I try to paint in the context of at least my personal experience. I've been doing drug enforcement for about 26 years, and to be honest with you, I've never seen anything like it. I remember, working through the methamphetamine scourge years ago in the early 90s as that swept across the United States, and we watched that, proliferate even into small households in the East Coast. I was stationed in New York at the time, and the methamphetamine scourge, again, it took us by storm, and everyone was kind of taken back by that because you had a drug that could be made at home to some degree. Completely different than what we're dealing with now. Now we have this opioid crisis that is literally burgeoning across the United States. Last year, 2016, we lost 64,000 individuals in this country to drug-related overdose deaths. And I tried to paint that in an appropriate context. You could literally take Lavelle Edwards Stadium on Brigham Young campus, fill that completely full, every single seat on game day, and wipe that off the face of the map. That's 64,000 people. That's how many people we lost last year. This year's numbers don't look any better. So we're losing a lot of people to drug-related overdose deaths. The majority of those deaths are opioid and heroin related.
I think it's probably instructive, in case somebody hasn't really been following, to make the connection between opioids and heroin. I know the billboards along the freeway are trying to educate us about this, that one is the same as the other. How are we getting a growing heroin problem and an opioid problem? What's the linkage there?
Well, it's a great question. Opioids are a synthetic drug, and opiate, with a T, is more of a natural drug. We get heroin and morphine out of opiates. Opioids are man-made, they're synthetic. So our synthetic opioids that we're seeing now, especially our pharmaceuticals like oxycodone, OxyContin, hydrocodone, etc., those are extremely powerful. They have a very highly addictive nature, very highly addictive properties to them. And when individuals either inadvertently or sometimes accidentally get addicted to these drugs, they end up suffering with addiction. 80% of those individuals now are segueing to street heroin. It's cheaper, it's more readily available. You get the same type of psychotropic, psychoactive effects as you do with opioids when you're using heroin. So that's what we're seeing. It's really a sense of supply and demand. If you can no longer get the opiates or the opioids, you end up transferring to heroin because it's on the street and it's readily available. But it's very deadly. And like we said, it's the same dead that you suffer from with opioids or heroin.
We're going to try and turn that into a conversation about the rising element of mental illness and homelessness. We'll do that as our first topic when we come back on the County Seat.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo Rivers. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Crisp, colorful, a world in transition. You don't have to travel the back roads of Maine to explore autumn in all of its glory. Beaver County offers fall in unique splendor, with drives along forgotten canyons and hikes through meadows exploding with vibrant hues of red and yellow. Hit the road with your family and discover a side of Beaver County you never knew you were missing. Autumn is fleeting, so don't hesitate. Beaver County, it's time to experience the real Utah.
ATV? Check. Four-wheel driving? Check. Bouldering? Check. Mountain biking? Check. Hiking? Check. River rafting? Check. Adventure is about more than just crossing activities off of a list, but hey, if you can find a place that gives you everything you're looking for, all the better. In Emery County, you'll find the San Rafael swell, trails, lakes, and the small-town hospitality you're looking for. San Rafael Country, in the heart of Utah. Visit us and check something off your list.
All local products have a story of magical places, real people, and delicious recipes spanning generations. So go ahead and discover flavors you've never tasted and friends you never knew you had. Utah's own Discover Local Food.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking today about opioids. I want to bring my attention from the drug and the addiction itself to the manifestations of it, which most arguably, or most people are aware, has been concentrated about the growing number and homeless problem in the Rio Grande area of Salt Lake City, enough so that Speaker Hughes adopted this as a mission. You've gone a little further than most people thought. You decided that if you're going to solve a problem, you needed to work there. Tell me what's going on.
Chad, the state legislature a number of years ago realized that this growing open-air drug trafficking that was going on in Salt Lake City and around the Rio Grande area and the homeless services that were there was out of control to a point where it was pretty hard to see a city or its police department all by itself deal with the carnage, with the crime, with the ecosystem of crime and the problems that were there. So we began engaging as a state. And I describe it as we were helping with the future construction of resource centers. We were putting police officers in our Midvale Family Center to help keep a calming effect as we kept that facility open longer. But what we were finding is in the areas that we were, as a state, providing more appropriations, things were getting worse. We were told that year over year things were worse than they had ever been. Now that's hard to hear as a state lawmaker because when you put funds, finite funds, towards an effort, there's a lot of things you walk away from, and a lot of my colleagues are not from Salt Lake City or Salt Lake County, but they'd shown the leadership that we were going to come together and try to fix a problem that we thought was larger than one city or one county, and it was a state. My disappointment and even my regret was that after all we had done, things were continuing to spiral, and social disorder was beyond what I think that the average Utahn would even understand. So I had a tipping point over the 4th of July holiday. We had some deaths occur, some violent acts occur. It was in the USA Today, UK Daily Mail. The whole world was watching the urban chaos happening in our capital city. And I decided on July 5th that I was going down to that area. I was going to have a storefront office, and all my legislative meetings were going to be held right there in front of and at the Rio Grande. And so we began to have policy discussions and starting to watch things we hadn't seen before and you would see in the Capitol building or in a committee meeting. What we did is we began to lay the groundwork for what's called Operation Rio Grande. Operation Rio Grande is looking to restore the social order, break the ecosystem of crime, and most importantly, for those that are vulnerable, we've had wolves amongst the vulnerable for years down there that was contributing to a growing epidemic of drug addiction. We wanted to stem that tide. We wanted to get after and break up that ecosystem of crime and then bring help to those who need it. Here's what I learned in my time down there. 4 out of the 5 heroin addicts that were looking for their fix, for their balloon of heroin out of somebody's backpack, 4 out of 5 began their addiction through pain medication and opioid prescriptions.
4 out of 5.
4 out of 5. And that was staggering to me. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. Did they abuse those drugs? Did they get outside that doctor's prescription? It turns out, Chad, that well within the doctor's prescription, you could find yourself a heroin addict or an addict of opioids, if you can't find them, moving on to heroin within 10 days. I thought I was naive to this. So I looked at an area that we have $67 million of state and county and city resources, service providers coming down here, $67 million that we plan to appropriate and spend and use in the next 20 months in that area. And I will tell you, the fountainhead of that chaos are opioids, where people have become drug addicted and they are there for a market that is insatiable.
What's unsaid in what you just told me is that some of those people that you think are derelict societal misfits that are living under viaducts, the stereotype we've had, very easily could have been a young rising athlete in a high school football team as little as 6 months ago.
Absolutely. It's the saddest thing. I was so naive to this, and as I decided to stay down there and learn people's stories, because there's too much anonymity down there where the criminals can really walk amongst and prey upon people that are in dire circumstances. What I learned is that you have athletes who've had a surgery and found themselves addicted. You have people that have come across an appropriate, or what looked like an appropriate prescription from their physician that has thrown them into this addiction. And when it becomes too hard to get that prescription drug, that is where the heroin becomes your next option. And we were seeing, Chad, people from all walks of life that were frequenting this area. That Rio Grande Street was a McDonald's drive-through of drug trafficking, and it was unabashed. They didn't care if police officers were there. I was in a suit. They didn't care. It didn't slow anyone down. And when you saw that, as well as the murdering and the violence that was happening, people that needed help, there were barriers, invisible barriers, where people were afraid to get to that area. My issue is this as a policymaker. We've been talking about the bottom of this cliff where people are devastated. They have fallen. I want to get above this cliff, and I want to talk about the manufacturers of these opioids. You have 99% of these drugs that are produced on the planet being sent to the United States, which only consists of about 5% of the world's population. That statistic is staggering when you think about it.
We will come back and talk about what some of the counties are doing and what we would like to see, is at least what Speaker Hughes would like to see, and obviously Agent Besser, and we'll cover that when we come back on the County Seat.
There is a place where looking out means looking in, where an impression lasting only a few seconds will be imprinted on a life forever, where courage is forged and innocence rediscovered, where remembering is rewarding and forgetting unforgettable. There is a place where truth is felt and where seeing is believing. There is a place.
Look south to adventure. Look south to beauty. Look south to San Juan County. Out here, the road goes on forever, and what you'll find will change how you see the world. Climb on your OHV and discover forgotten landscapes and vistas that challenge the imagination. From Blanding and Monticello to the cliff faces of Monument Valley, we're open and ready for you to explore. San Juan County, Utah's Canyon Country.
It's one more, here we go again. I tell myself I'm not enough, but one more time is not enough. One last kiss and then you were gone, and I'm here wishing you could stay a little longer. Stay a little longer. Wishing you could stay a little longer.
Welcome back to the County Seat. We are talking today about the opioid crisis. Agent Besser, this is, I've been really corrected, because my image is the good kid gone bad, he ends up looking like he lives under a viaduct. You're not seeing this.
Yeah, it's completely different. The paradigm has completely changed. You know, people think of drugs, they think of the dirty side of town. And what we're seeing, that's not necessarily the case anymore. It used to be, you know, the drugs that come in a baggie. What about the drugs that come in a bottle? Because you can't divorce the two. We're literally seeing soccer moms, clergy, businessmen, high school kids, grade school kids getting hooked on opioids quietly at home, not talking about it because they don't want to deal with the stigma of shame that may come with that, quietly dying at home. Something I've never seen before. That's how pervasive this is. That's the difference now. We're no longer dealing with the seedy side of town. We're dealing with home.
Commissioner Lee, talk to me for a minute about what Utah County has done, because you kind of are the headline maker as far as what's happening with this. And I was very surprised but gratified when I read the headline.
Yes, you know, in looking at this is not something kind of behind the scenes, as mentioned here. These are faces that we see. We all know them. It's in our neighborhoods, it's in our families, it's there all the time, and we're not going to just duck away from this. As an elected responsibility to take a sworn oath to protect and defend, and that is the citizens of our county as well. And as we look at that in a realistic manner, we have to stand up to some of these issues and say, here we are, we're going to make a stand on it. It's not something we're just going to hide behind and say, well, maybe some other day. We have, you know, these false marketing messages, and I want to just kind of jump to that really quick. That they're saying out here that opioids are safe and effective, and they treat chronic and non-cancer pain. They also say that the existence of scientific evidence that opioids are effective for long-term use. You know, it's a narrative that is not correct. And as elected officials, and as we're looking at this, it doesn't just affect the people. We have it within our sheriff's department. When we're looking at down at the jail, we deal with it on a regular basis. Our Wasatch mental health issues, the drug and alcohol abuse, all the substances that we're trying to alleviate, they're there constantly. It affects the county on its bottom line with the budgeting, because we have to go after and deal with these issues. They're in their emergency rooms. We have every day more than 1,000 people treated in the emergency rooms for misuse of prescription drugs. Not for the proper use, but the misuse of prescription drugs. These need to be addressed. We're not necessarily going out there and saying, you know, that we want to have everybody always feel pain all the time, but it's the misuse and then the leading as it gets into the drug abuses and the drug overdoses that are a big concern for us. And we have that standing in the county where we're directly affected by that, and so we're leading out and saying we need to pursue legal actions to turn the tide of this, or to at least address it.
You're saying that basically that you're going to seek a legal remedy and not wait for a legislative remedy, and that legal remedy is based on not only harm to individuals within your county, but actual harm to the county and its resources.
Exactly. Harm to the county and its resources. We put millions of dollars to fight against this and to offset it. And so, yes, it's a legal action that would say the county is at risk here.
I think this is a very noble thing that Utah County has undertaken. Do you think it'll be enough to turn the edge of the conversation?
Utah County alone? No way. It's got to be a whole bunch of counties and states and others that come into play to make it happen.
Chad, here's what's important. You have 12 states who on their own, not collectively in a coalition of states, but 12 states that have stepped forward and said, we are going to litigate with Big Pharma because you are producing a product that is turning heroin addicts out of patients within 10 days. 10 to 30 to 60 days, people can, within the prescription they've been prescribed, become addicted, dangerously or even fatally addicted. We want to see states, counties. We have 4 Republican counties in the state of Tennessee, a good Republican red state like Tennessee. You've got counties, over 30 of them, some of the largest counties in the United States, who have to, again, at the bottom of the cliff, try to help people that have fallen, trying to help with behavioral health and trying to keep the wolves and the heroin dealers away from them. We're going to go up to the top of this cliff, and we want there to be an enormity of counties and of states and even cities that go to the Big Pharma and litigate to the point where the manufacturers of these drugs decide the liability is too great. We have to change practice. We have to change behavior. That's what I'm after. There are settlements and dollars to be retrieved to reimburse Operation Rio Grande, all the costs that counties and the state have incurred. But until we get this multi-prong attack, until there is, again, an enormity of lawsuits and accountability brought upon those that are bringing these drugs into the market, I don't think you're going to get the change in behavior.
So let me ask you, Bill, has there been pushback from what Utah County's setting out to do?
There's been some emails that started, and I'm sure there'll be pushback for it. And you know, litigation is always counted in dollars, but in this case, sometimes it's the people that is more important for us to be looking at, not necessarily the dollars of win-loss when it comes to dollars. That's not necessarily why I'm involved, but that's how we keep score. In this case, it's trying to say enough's enough when it comes to this, and we need to turn that tide, and it's more important for us to get our people into safe places and the marketing done appropriately.
Would the litigation direct a different prescribing method, or at a court level, or would it be a labeling thing? What are you hoping for as a remedy?
Stop this false stuff that's going on with the marketing, for one, and to turn it around so that we don't have this kind of marketing going on that allows for these drugs to be out there in a sense that they're dangerous. It's a dangerous drug, and yet they're sitting on our shelves. They're sitting in our closets. They're there all the time, and it's almost like sitting on the edge of a line at the freeway where we're saying, well, we have all this right here. We're gonna have a camp right there, and not knowing that the cars are going past 100 miles an hour, and saying we're okay because we're on this side of the line. But what we don't know is that our kids and others can cross that line so quickly that they're gone in seconds.
Let's drive this home to victims who can't speak for themselves. Right now, in America, every 25 minutes, a baby is born suffering from opiate withdrawal. Every 25 minutes, one baby. That's 1 out of every 200 babies born is born suffering from some type of opioid withdrawal. That is staggering to me, because those are little individuals, little victims who can't even speak for themselves.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I'm a little overwhelmed. We're going to take a break. We'll come back and finish this conversation on the county seat.
There's a little place on a Utah map where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
The Utah Farm Bureau began as a collection of farmers supporting each other to raise the food we enjoy. Today, Farm Bureau membership encompasses everyone, whether ranchers, growers, or just everyday folks like you and me. Members enjoy discounts on items like vehicles and ATVs, or insurance that's very affordable. You don't have to be a farmer to join, and dues are small, but together we make a big difference in keeping our food supply local and abundant. Join Utah Farm Bureau.
Hills Mall offers more than just shopping. Bring the whole family and enjoy SeaQuest Interactive Aquarium to feed the fish and exotic birds, hold live reptiles, and even swim with the stingrays. Or pump up the action and visit Dartside, Utah's premier soft foam dart tag arena. And don't forget the Great Room Escape, where you can challenge your friends to solving mysteries inside themed rooms. So come and experience great fun at the Layton Hills Mall and visit playindavis.com for other great activities.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our conversation today has been about the opioid crisis and some of the innovative things that the state, the Speaker of the House, DEA, and the counties are doing. Let's focus on what counties need to do. Utah County, you guys have said regardless of whoever else comes to the table, we are going to take this on in a legal battle, and it's a big project. This is not a county attorney thing. What do counties need to do?
No, the counties are, we're going to go out to an RFP, which is a request for proposal, and we've already had multiple law agencies across the United States, from New York, Texas, California, all over the place, come to us and say, what do you think about this issue? And so we'll throw that out there. We'll find the best one that fits the needs that we have and that we feel comfortable with, and then we'll move forward. And we'll move forward with a good team in place.
Chad, here's the key: we need strength in numbers. There needs to be a multiple front war. We need Utah County. Salt Lake County has indicated that they are ready to step forward in this space. We need the counties of the state of Utah to join over 30 counties across this country in saying that if there was such a thing as a tobacco lawsuit, that you could use a product and maybe get emphysema or lung cancer in 20 years of using that product, what about the product where you can become a heroin addict in 10 days or 30 days? The risk to this public, the carnage that it has created, has to be brought forward. We have to confront this as a population, but those that have created these drugs and the carnage that they've created have to be held accountable, and that is what the counties, they have legal standing, they can step forward and begin that. And I really believe that bottom line, unfortunately, is what will be the catalyst to change attitudes and practices with the pharmaceutical companies.
Okay, so if counties want to get into this dogfight, do they contact Utah County, or do they contact your office, Speaker Hughes?
Look, we're at a conference right now of counties, and I am here to engage with our county leaders. Commissioner Lee is doing the same thing in terms of his example and Utah County's example. We are here to talk about coming together, and I think the discussions that we're going to have here at this conference with our other county public servants, we are going to band together. We need to see, I think you need to see certainly the largest counties in Utah, but there isn't a county that's immune from the carnage that's occurred here, and so that's what we're going to do and continue to do.
What do all of us need to do?
I think that in the state of Utah, we have a pretty strong self-constitution within ourselves. We need to come forward, and we've always been able to address issues, even hard issues. This is one of those hard issues. We need the people to stand up, start speaking out, and saying enough's enough with this thing and telling their story.
Okay, gentlemen, that's the charge. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Remember, local government is where your life happens, good and bad. The solutions will be found in us collectively working together, and that's part of the reason we bring you the county seat every week. Share this on social media. Look for breaking news on our county seat Facebook page. Like it, and you'll be notified of things that are happening in real time. We'll see you next week on the county seat.